this is happening at the University of Michigan. They have a satanic group active on and off the university campus.
Well, at Harvard University, some student organization they claim to be satanic or Luciferian was going to hold a black mass on campus.
That's
They
right.
did call it off.
That's right.
But I think they were testing the waters to see how far they could take this agenda.
Well, off the campus is a satanic group, a formal group
I see.
in where the University of Michigan is. Is that Lansing? I'm not sure what city it is.
University of Michigan.
But they
East
were
Lansing is Michigan State. Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So they, in the mainstream media, they reported an official satanic group,
Right.
organized group,
Mm-hmm.
was going down to Louisiana to do a satanic ritual for the city council.
Right.
And it was like there was a big question about whether the city council wanted them to do it or not, but it ended up happening, and now there's a new chapter of that satanic group in Louisiana, in that city. I think it was New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So this is coming out of the military.
Okay.
It's part of the occult.
All right.
The
So does
occult
this perhaps trace back to Colonel Michael Aquino?
Oh,
Are you familiar with that individual?
absolutely. It traces back to the Jesuits. It traces back to Mesopotamia, to the Kabbalah and the Talmud, which were magic cult instruction books.
Mm-hmm.
And they recommended pedophilia in children, but they had to be under 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the Kabbalah and the Talmud. And properly practicing Jews, I'm not including them,
Mm-hmm.
they follow the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
The Talmud and the Kabbalah are satanic.
The Babylonian Talmud. Is that
Yes,
what it is?
yes.
Okay.
Those are satanic cults.
And are those satanic cults controlled, or were they created by these ancient Iranian bloodlines?
Yes, they were.
Please
They were.
expand.
For instance, the Aldobrandini is one of the ancient Iranian bloodlines. It's a famous Italian family.
Mm-hmm.
And Al-Dob, Al is the, Dob is devil, Dini. Al-Dob,
The people of the devil.
Yeah, the people of the devil.
Wow.
So they're definitely satanic. They're proud of it. They're open about it. We have a website, lorenmarais.info, and we have a Rothschild ball with photographs of the Rothschilds and their guests and members of their family doing satanic practices.
This is the masked ball photos?
The masked ball.
And by the way, they're called Venetian masks, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we can see the cultural and the
Yes.
historical continuities, ladies and gentlemen.
And the Venetians were Iranians.
Well, yeah, you alluded to that.
Yes.
That's why I
Yes.
interjected that, because
Yes.
I'm interested in masking.
But the Middle East, these Mesopotamians, all of Eurasia, we know now from DNA studies done over the last 5 years, especially by Russia, all of Eurasia was settled by Central Asians.
Please talk a little bit about the DNA studies, and I
Yes.
assume that these studies are coming out of the Human Genome Project, right? Am I-
No, they wouldn't be coming out of the
Okay.
Human Genome Project, which is American. They're coming out of Russian
Okay.
scientific research.
All right, because
Yes.
this DNA, from our conversations,
Yes.
this DNA research provides the scientific backing that helps support this hypothesis or this theory in the making. It's irrefutable. It's ironclad, and I think this is probably the most important development in this type
Right.
of research. It's hard science. It's not fantasy. It's
Yes.
supported by
Right.
definitive DNA analysis, and you can
Yes.
trace the distribution
Yes.
of these different peoples, these different
Yes.
tribal groups, and
Yes.
how their culture and their religious practices migrated
Yes.
across the world, and how they have been transmitted to us down here to 2016 are embodied
Right.
in people like Linda
Right.
P.B. Katehi.
Right.
Please.
And so these ancient Iranian tribes moved into Europe and the Middle East. So the Basques are ancient Iranian bloodlines.
Is there a DNA
Yes, from
report?
the DNA.
Okay.
Yes. The Berbers in North Africa in the Altai Mountains, the Basques, the Berbers, and the Kurds all came from the Hittites.
And
They
there's
hit-
DNA research on
Yes,
that?
this is from
Okay.
DNA research and also language similarities.
All right.
And
So
blood,
this is a multidisciplinary effort.
And
But
blood
the thing
types.
is, these disciplines are all compartmentalized.
they're
but
compartmentalized.
You're achieving
Yes.
a grand
Into-
synthesis of all this.
Yes, synthesized it.
Okay.
I've distilled the information
Right.
into a picture that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's all internally consistent as well.
All right.
So you take multi-factors, you start putting them together and relating them, and then you find more things. They introduce new things that you wouldn't have thought of. How could I ever think in a million years I knew that arboreal rice had to be from Iran?
Mm-hmm.
And but how would I ever imagine that investigating Katehi's origins would bring me to the source of arboreal rice in Iran?
Or the Familia Castro.
Yeah, or the Familia
Right. The
Castro.
Farnese.
Yeah.
Right.
And
all
so
the different linkages.
So, for instance, with Castro, this is a different kind of a DNA study, but it's physical characteristics and how powerful they are. I said, okay, Alejandro Farnese, or Pope Paul III, worked for a Borgia, and who was the Pope. And when that Borgia died, Lucretia Borgia was his daughter, the infamous Lucretia Borgia. And so when that Pope died, he made Alessandro Farnese a cardinal at 24, and then he made him Pope as his successor. And so I took photographs of paintings of Alessandro Farnese when he was young, and then when he was Pope, and then when he was a very old man as a Pope, in his 80s or something. And then I took paintings of his sons and their coats of arms. The coats of arms are always on the paintings. And then I collected Pope Paul III's grandsons, photos of them. They were cardinals. And then I found a painting of Fidel Castro in black, like a Spanish hat or a monk's hat, and a black robe with just a tiny white collar, peeking through. And I said, "What's this?" Well, it's his portrait, which will have his coat of arms added to it after he dies.
Mm-hmm.
And then that will be put in some palace in Italy.
Okay.
In Piacenza, one of their palaces in Piacenza. And then I said, okay, well, what happened in the Hellenic period is that the Farneses, one of them was one of the generals, one of the 8 generals who guarded Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great appointed him to be the governor. He was the governor of ancient Egypt. And when Alexander the Great died, he made himself a pharaoh. And Alexander the Great had given his sister to this general to marry. So they became the pharaoh and the pharaoh's wife. And after that, almost all the Farneses have a middle name or first name of Alexander, Alejandro, or Alessandro. So Castro's name is Fidel Alejandro Castro.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can trace them even before that back into Mesopotamia.
So we've got the genealogy, as you
Yes.
read with P.B. Katehi.
Yes.
We've got the DNA, and you were talking about the physiological resemblances
The
that you were doing.
physiological.
Please break that down for us.
So when I got all these pictures together,
Mhm.
and I had a photograph of Fidel Castro when he was a teenager or something with no facial hair.
Mhm.
And so I got a painting of Philip I of Spain, the first Habsburg king of Spain.
Mhm.
And he had a certain kind of lips. They were very thick, and they were sort of had vertical lines in them or folds.
Mhm.
And that is a mutation. It's a genetic mutation. It's actually a defect.
Hmm.
And I compared it to Fidel Castro's lips. He has Habsburg lips.
Mhm.
It's indistinguishable. I mean, it's absolutely a bloodline. And then I did this to John Kerry. John Kerry's family were Jews in the Habsburg Empire in Czechoslovakia, and they were Hohenjuda, house Jews. So they were very, very high in the court, and they advised the kings. Teresa Heinz Kerry is from a Portuguese Hohenjuda family, and her family advised the Portuguese court. And then I found a painting of John Kerry's ancestor on his mother's side. She was a Forbes,
Right.
not Malcolm Forbes.
Of the opium family Forbes.
The opium family.
The Yale
Yes.
Forbes.
And I found the first sea captain, Forbes sea captain, in 1823. This painting was painted, and it's in his house, which is now a museum in Boston. Those are the Boston Brahmins. They were the drug dealing captains, and I just couldn't believe it. Oh my God! That ancestor, Captain Forbes, who had 3 of the fastest clipper ships when he was 24, John Kerry looks exactly like him. So these are ancient bloodlines that they keep. They know how to breed, who to breed into the line, and how to keep the physical characteristics. How could someone 150 years later, 175 years later, how could John Kerry look exactly like him? That's like 10 generations or 8 generations.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And then I realized they have very, very strict breeding programs. And for instance, with the royal families, the popes had to always give permission for 2 members of a royal family to marry.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, especially if they were on the throne. And there could be no relatives or family association for 7 generations, in order to marry. And when the Roman empires collapsed, the Western Empire collapsed first, the Eastern Empire collapsed in the 1500s, late 1400s. These ruling families wanted to reassemble the Habsburg Empire. Remember, the Roman Empire became the Habsburg Empire, and they wanted to recreate that Roman Empire, and they did it by intermarrying very closely related people, but they had to all have land that were pieces of part of the Holy Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. And so there was so much inbreeding in the Habsburgs. The Jesuits did it, actually. And they did it, one particular Habsburg prince, who was to be the emperor, Holy Roman Empire, had so much inbreeding that recently Germany did DNA studies on the whole Habsburg bloodlines. And they said he had the DNA of someone who had been the product of sex between a sister and a brother.
That's Egyptian, isn't it?
That's Egyptian.
That's a dynastic pairing.
Yes.
So what you're saying also, before we leave
Mm-hmm.
this point or move on past it, is that certain physical traits are also passed on.
Yes,
that
they are.
They're telltale
Yes.
physical traits because of this breeding program, including
Yes.
mouth structure, in the
Yes.
case of Fidel, at the
Yes.
brow, the bridge, the nose
Yes.
structure.
Yes, intelligence, beauty. There are many, many characteristics that they're breeding for, but it can also be a way to wage war. So instead of waging all these wars to reunite the Habsburg Empire, the war was in bed.
Uh-huh.
So they did it through inbreeding.
And then they can reintegrate the
Well,
empire.
Well,
or
after about
consolidate it.
after about 200 years, a bloodline will just die out because they're infertile from so much inbreeding.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would just take a cadet family, one of the other branches, and they'd plug them in.
Mhm.
And so it was the same bloodline, but if you look at the Habsburgs, they all have strawberry blonde hair. It's reddish blonde. And there's a Pope, Orsini, who had reddish blonde hair, and I think he was involved in the Habsburg line.
Okay. Well, that helps explain how, by examining portraiture and today photography,
Yes,
and perhaps some forensic scientists
yes,
can break it down as well, measure eye
Yes.
distances and eye color,
yes,
and of course DNA. We're going to be plugging in some of the missing
Yes.
pieces of this puzzle here
yes,
to further support this hypothesis of this ancient bloodline that's at the head of our
Yes.
world civilization.
yes. And so,
And mean us harm. They want to,
Yes.
from what
Yes.
I'm gathering, they want to exterminate most of the
Yes.
human population, regardless of race.
they do. They've had their own breeding program, especially through the universities.
Mhm.
I had 53 marriage proposals at Davis and in the UC system, and I was going crazy. It was frightening me to death. I thought they were crazy. I didn't know why they were asking me to marry them.
Mhm.
Well, they were Kuhn Loeb, the Kuhn Loeb banking
Yes.
family.
Mhm.
They were there was another one, a couple more. Anyway, they were all banking. Goldman Sachs. There was a Sachs introduced to me in the geology department at Davis in Berkeley, and he said, "You're really a catch," and I didn't know what was going on.
Mhm.
Now I understand. These are breeding programs.
And you were targeted
Yes.
as a broodmare.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
how Diana
Yes.
Spencer described herself.
Yes. She was a broodmare.
She was a broodmare
Yes.
to help regenerate
And
the
she was a
decadent
broodmare.
line of.
She was a broodmare because her biological father was Sir Jimmy Goldsmith.
Sure.
And the Goldsmiths and the Rothschilds came from Frankfurt, Germany in the mid-1700s to establish banking in London, to take over
Sure.
that banking center.
Mhm.
And they intermarried. They are Iranians. They are not Jews. They're Iranians. And so that put the Iranian bloodline into the royal family of England.
Mhm.
And we're going to find out. You see, Kate Middleton's mother's maiden name was Goldsmith.
Mhm.
So they have a hidden history too.
Sure.
And
And there's a book, a fairly decent biography. It's called Billionaire, and it's about Sir James Goldsmith.
yes,
And it will tell you about his marriages, his affairs,
yes,
his dalliances.
yes,
This might be slightly off topic, though, but it seems like bastardy is really important to understanding this.
Yes.
They breed outside of these family
Oh,
authorized
yes,
lines. But
yes.
how do these bastards, in this strict term,
Yes.
how do they figure into this ruling system?
Well, one of them is one of those bastards is Hitler. He was a
Rothschild.
Rothschild.
Sure.
An-
I
another
thought that was just an apocryphal.
No.
It's,
another
okay.
one is Bill Clinton's mother, who was the illegitimate child of Winthrop Rockefeller,
Sure.
who was governor of Arkansas.
Arkansas.
That's why Clinton was president, and now Hillary Clinton. She's actually, her middle name was Rodham. What I looked it up, and it was shortened from Rodonsky, and she's from a Jewish family in Rodonsky, Poland.
Mhm.
And
Wasn't that her stepfather? Or her natural, her
No, that's-
biological father?
Rodonsky was her natural
Her
father.
okay.
Yeah.
Because She also had a stepfather who was Jewish, I
Uh-huh.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she's
Okay.
Eastern European.
So they were bred.
They were bred.
They were
That
set
was
up.
a breeding.
Okay.
Yes, that was a breeding program.
And just out of curiosity, because this is in the news lately, there's some talk that Chelsea Clinton was the offspring of Webster Hubbell and Hillary Clinton. Who was Webster Hubbell? I know.
I don't know.
I know he was an advisor to the Clinton family,
Oh.
but she's a dead ringer for Webster Hubbell.
Oh, well then
She's not the child of Bill Clinton. In other
nobody
words.
cares in those families. They just breed who they're told to breed to.
So why was Bill Clinton sterile, or he was unable to breed?
They didn't. They didn't want that bloodline. They wanted the other one.
They wanted the Radinsky one, bloodline.
No, they wanted the Hubble.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to figure out.
I don't know
You
who he is.
Okay,
so.
that's on the agenda for
Yeah.
researchers. We're deputizing people
Yeah.
who are watching this.
Yeah.
We are deputizing you as researchers, because as you were finding out, it's not coming out of academia. Most of the exciting research and the insights aren't bound by these.
Another one is
areas.
the royal family of Monaco. and
Grace Kelly.
Yes, Prince Rainier was actually the son of a Algerian, a Moroccan housemaid,
I didn't know that.
and the Prince of Monaco. And he was sterile, so his wife had a baby with no one exactly knows who.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how beautiful they are, Princess Caroline and Princess Stephanie, and how gorgeous, very handsome Prince Rainier was. That's because his mother was half Moroccan.
Mm-hmm.
She was Berber. This is the ancient Iranian bloodline bred back into her. Another one is...
Where does the Kelly line come in? She's Irish American
Um,
and Catholic.
She was more than that. She was
that's what I'm
blonde
asking.
blonde and blue eyes, so she's
Right.
Iranian.
She's Iranian. Because
That's
that's what you're referring to, alluding
Yes.
to it as a mutation.
Yes.
The blue-eyed blonde
Yes.
is a mutation.
Yes.
So this is, again, how
Yes.
you can
Yes.
trace this bloodline
Yes.
through physiological.
Right.
And she
Yes.
was, world-class beauty.
Yes, very beautiful.
Down to today, which
Yes.
we're still
Yes.
admiring her movies with,
Yes.
Cary Grant. And
Right. But you see,
Mm-hmm.
she's Irish, and the Irish were Iranian.
Please expand on that,
The
because that's so counterintuitive.
well, these Iranians with mutations felt more comfortable. The blonde and the redheads, they don't have the right pigment. They
Very
don't have normal.
fair-skinned.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so they felt more comfortable in colder climates or at higher altitudes.
Mm-hmm.
So they migrated up into Scandinavia
Mm-hmm.
and to the British Isles. And there are a lot of ginger men in Ireland. Well, that's Iranian blood. And it has to be, remember, it's a recessive gene, so it has to be from the male and the female.
Is there a DNA study on this recessive gene and tracing Irish people, quote unquote, to Iranians?
Oh, yes, there's,
Okay.
yes.
I just wanted
Yes.
to double check.
Yes.
Just so
And
that
that's
the
in the-
viewers understand that
Yes.
this is not just being pulled out of a hat here.
And that's,
This is science we're
Yes.
talking about.
this is science-based. It's solid, and I really trust these recent Russian DNA studies. They did them very carefully, and they did them for a very specific purpose.
I wanted to ask about that. Politically, why are the
For
Russians doing this? Please.
For instance, there's all of this uproar in the Ukraine now because the Ukrainians are saying we speak Ukrainian, and the Russians, the pro-Russian people, are speaking Russian, and they're Russian Orthodox, but we're Ukrainians, we speak Ukrainian. Well, it's the Bolsheviks who made up a pidgin language and called it Ukrainian to set up a dynamic that divided the Ukrainian. They made a Hegelian dialectic artificially. They're all the same people. They came from Scandinavia into Kiev. They're called the Rus.
Which is red.
Rus, yes,
Yes,
red.
Mm-hmm.
And we watched the Ukrainian war for 2 years, and there would be all these soldiers. Some were blonde, the Ukrainians, and a lot of them had dark hair. And then all of a sudden, a little video clip would come on from the battlefield for that day. And there would be a soldier standing there with ginger red flaming hair, and you go, oh my God, where did he come from? And there were Viking colonies all over the Ukraine on the rivers for thousands of years, and in Turkey. There are redheads all over Turkey also.
Sure. All the way down through Rome, right?
Yes.
The Varangian Guard.
Yes.
Okay.
And so all of these were ancient Iranians with that mutation who went into Scandinavia to a more comfortable, a colder climate. And then they came down through the Mediterranean on their ships and colonized the Mediterranean and Ukraine and Turkey and the Crimea.
So this marriage between Grace Kelly, Irish Catholic, Irish American, and Prince Rainier of Monaco was really a homecoming.
Iranian bloodlines.
It's a genetic homecoming.
Yes. It was
Right.
Iranian bloodlines.
And you had the power of the entire world focused on this. This was the biggest wedding until Princess Diana married Charles. This was
That's
like
right.
a world historical
That's right.
event. It was a fairy tale princess bride
Yes.
type of scenario.
Yes.
All right. So you
Now-
had all that energy focused on the consummation of these
Right.
these lines that were
Right.
coming back
And
together
they-
and fusing.
They keep rebreeding the ancient stock, the chi in Italian, like let's see, like
Medici.
Medici. Yeah, chi means the stock, the bloodline you're from, or the tribe. It means DNA is what it means,
Right.
and it's always through the female. It's not through the male. It's through the female, and they also breed their animals through the female. That's the most important breeding. In the breeding pair, the female is the most important, and it's because the DNA and the RNA in the mitochondria is separate from the DNA and RNA in the nucleus of the cell. And it's the mitochondria that provide all the energy for the body and body functions. So in the organs that use the most energy, the highest percentage of mitochondria are in those cells, and it's the brain cells and the heart cells. So when radiation passes through a cell, it can miss the nucleus, but it can't miss the mitochondria. And so when it damages the DNA in the mitochondria and the RNA, then you have all of these brain diseases and heart diseases, which have escalated. They've gone up exponentially since the nuclear age started with the dropping of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let's take a brief break so that we can refresh ourselves, and then we'll restart for part 2. Thank you, Loren. This has been a great conversation. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to complete today's discussion with a analysis of Urban Shield and connect it to what is taking place here at the University of California, and more specifically the University of California, Davis, with Linda, quote unquote, PB Katehi, and all the other characters in this crazy little drama of ours. So, Loren, could you
Yes.
please give us an overview of Urban Shield?
Yes.
What is the implication there?
So, Chancellor Katehi was hired in October of 2009. In March of 2011, Fukushima occurred. And in October of 2011, a military exercise with international troops was carried out in the San Francisco Bay Area on the UC Berkeley campus. And this included military personnel, the U.S., Israel, and the mostly the Aramco oil plantations in the Gulf region.
So is Saudi Arabia involved in this?
Not Saudi. I don't believe Saudi Arabia
Okay.
was, but the United Arab Emirates,
Okay.
Kuwait, and
Israel?
Israel, and maybe Saudi Arabia was involved. But
Any Asian countries?
no,
Russia was not involved?
No.
Okay, just those
No.
that you know. Okay.
it was.
All right.
I remember it because I thought it was very strange
Okay.
to have only Middle Eastern troops. That was really strange.
Okay.
And they were doing. They were fully armed with live ammunition and everything, doing exercises.
So you were an eyewitness to these exercises?
Yes, on the UC campus, UC Berkeley
All right.
campus.
Let's
yes.
establish that Loren saw
Yes.
this with her own eyes.
And that was completely bizarre. Well, they're having this every year. And Israel received the top award for military prowess from the Urban Shield organizers. It's the Pentagon. For their performance on the UC Berkeley campus.
Mhm.
But isn't it bizarre to have a fully armed military exercise on a university campus?
From what you've told me, no, it doesn't
No.
surprise me anymore. But it's untenable, and my gosh, what have we become?
Well, it means foreign troops are coming to our urban areas.
Okay.
They have talked. There's been talk from the military and military programs that people have been able to get documents, government documents, verifying that they plan to do. They plan food riots. When Janet Napolitano came to the University of California as president about 3 years ago, it was in October. The first thing she did was to send people out from Homeland Security and FEMA to survey all of the food sources in the Bay Area. And they went in and they took over cash registers for a week, so they got the whole money flow. They checked these food stores, little grocery stores, restaurants. They took them all over. They occupied them. And now they have the ability to completely lock up all food in America. And this is what is going to incite the food riots.
Mhm.
And
Now, the purpose of that is what? For the civilian population to cry for martial law? Or
Yes,
for
yes.
for the government
Yes,
or the
yes.
men in the powder blue helmets to
Yes.
come and rescue us?
Yes, yes.
To bring us food?
Yes, bring
So
it-
they're going to start.
yes.
This is a siege
Yes.
warfare.
it's a siege warfare, exactly. That's exactly right. And it's to subdue the civilian population to be subservient and obedient to them. And they don't get fed if they don't do what they're told to do.
Mhm.
So Urban Shield happened, and then 2 weeks later, the George Soros Foundation funded a color revolution in the United States. This is after all the color revolutions they did in Central Asia and the Middle East. And we know what happened to those countries. They were wrecked. So George Soros and the Open Society Foundation that he funds sponsored the Occupy movement, which started on Wall Street in New York City, and then it spread all over the world, including the Bay Area and Davis.
Of course.
Now, what is very bizarre, and no one has been able to answer my question, why was that Occupy situation, why did that happen on the Davis campus when Katehi was chancellor? Because Davis was never anti-war. They weren't interested in anti-war. They weren't interested in free speech in the 60s. They were just so passive. I was a student here then. And I even went one day with a professor. He drove me down to Berkeley. He'd gone to Berkeley, and I worked for him, Dr. Axelrod. And he said, let's go down and look at the campus. I know they're shooting tear gas and stuff at the students. So we went down. I think we were going to the library, and my God, there were people running all over the place. They were throwing bricks off of balconies. There was tear gas. The police were using it all over the campus to subdue the students. It was just so different from...
What year was this about?
That was about 1968.
68, okay.
Yeah, it was towards the end of the Vietnam War.
Right, the whole anti-war movement,
Yeah,
sure.
it was the anti-war movement. And that was very, very bizarre. I just wanted to go back to quiet, peaceful Davis. And it's still really quiet and peaceful. It's a very nice campus, very nice ambiance.
Deceptively so.
Yeah, deceptively so, until you find out what's really going on. So, so the Soros Occupy movement, Laurence was observing it in Oakland and San Francisco, and he realized that there were things that were very strange, like goon troops dressed up like activists, and then he realized it was really dangerous. He got on a plane and left. He went to the East Coast, and that night is when the first murder happened of people involved in that Occupy movement in Oakland. So it got violent after that, and it was infiltrated by law enforcement. So he was right, it was too dangerous to be there.
And that was part of the MO back into the 60s as well.
Yes, so what happened is, of all places, Davis had an Occupy movement, but the students were very, very quiet, and they were very peaceful, and they were sitting on the ground with their hoodies on and their heads down, and it was...
This is November 2011
yes,
we're talking about, around
yes,
Thanksgiving time.
Yes, and they weren't rioting or anything, and I mean, they were completely peaceful. They had a constitutional right to express their opposition to whatever they wanted to. And so I guess that now, you see, the chancellors don't do anything without an okay from the UC president's office, and or they're very carefully handled and instructed and everything, programmed. And so Linda Katehi sort of stayed inside the Marac Hall until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then it was in the middle of the night or very late at night, and she came out, and the students were sitting on the ground. There wasn't a peep out of them, holding candles. And she walked through that crowd. She's very attractive, but that night she looked like a demon. And she walked through that crowd with these long strides and this very, very horrible look on her face. And these are her students doing what they're entitled to do legally. And she went through the crowd, and then she disappeared. And then I think it was the next day, the police, the campus police came in with cans of, they called it pepper spray, but it was actually bear repellent. And that's a play on the bear represents the University of California, the grizzly bear.
The golden bear.
The golden bear,
yes,
right.
Which is also on the state flag.
Right.
Of the California Republic.
That's right.
Yes.
It's a logo, it's a symbol of the state of California. And so they said it was pepper spray, but it wasn't. It was bear repellent.
Okay.
So
golden bear repellent.
So the order came from the president's office.
Which is? Who
Janet Napolitano.
Okay, of this bloodline
yes.
we're talking about.
Yes,
okay.
of what we're talking about. So that caused a global scandal. It was covered by all the media everywhere. Katehi was investigated, and she was blamed and everything, but of course the president's office protected her, and she was not put on administrative leave. I don't know if there was an investigation done, maybe a wimpy one or a halfway one. But
I think they had William Bratton come in as an outside consultant, and of course he wrote a report that was going to minimize her responsibility.
Yeah.
You know who he was? He was a former police chief of, I think, Boston, and
of
then he was
Boston.
in Los Angeles,
Uh-huh.
and now he's just sort of a freelance police brutality
Yeah, yeah,
consultant.
yeah.
That's William Bratton.
He's their boy now.
He's their boy.
Yeah.
And we should look in his genealogy
We
as well.
should. And so what Chancellor Katehi actually did was she violated their constitutional rights to free speech, to
Freedom of assembly.
freedom of assembly, and in other ways as well. So so that was very, very strange. I never did understand that.
Just as a sidebar, I had dinner with a faculty person who will go unnamed, and he said that at a faculty meeting, he's with a very large department here at the UC Davis campus, P.B. Katehi, I'm just going to call her P.B. Katehi, not Linda, her cover name. P.B. Katehi came to the faculty meeting, and she gleefully, gloatingly announced that she was going to move on these students. She told them the revelation of the method, what she was going to do to. So what I'm saying here is that there was malice aforethought involved. She had planned to do it.
This is the spillover of Urban Shield. That was the kickoff. The oppression and suppression of now the universities.
So was there a ritualistic component to this?
Absolutely.
She needed to bloody her sword
Yes.
to earn her bones,
Yes.
to get the little teardrop
Yes.
tattoo
Yes.
under her eye.
She had to kill the children.
She had to kill the golden bear,
Yes.
kill the Americans,
Yes. Kill the dream.
kill the dream.
Kill the freedom. Kill the hope. Kill the future.
Wow.
And so Katehi was the introduction of overt takeover of not only UC Davis, but of the University of California and of all universities in the U.S., the land-grant universities, by the Jesuits and Monsanto. You see, the Jesuits created Monsanto, and Monsanto now is building buildings all over the Davis campus with their name on the buildings, and you see more and more administrators who have that Jesuit look. They have a look. This is an excellent book, The Secret History of the Jesuits. It's by Edmund Paris. This is what the Jesuits did to 68 countries in Europe, destroyed them in the 1800s. And then they came to the U.S., and they're doing the same thing now here. And
Could you describe the look?
the look
The physical
is
look.
the physical look is wire rim glasses. It's all minimalization. It's a real stretched skin, sort of, very clean shaven, and then just hair short and slicked back. It's just a real clean cut look. I noticed that a lot of the people who go to Bohemian Grove have that same look. So those are the financiers and economists and the people who drive the economy. They have that same look.
Okay.
Now, Obama, everyone in his administration, 10% of Congress, they have all been Jesuit trained. Governor Brown, Leon Panetta is a Californian, Janet Napolitano, they all went to Santa Clara University, a Jesuit institution.
Which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is down around the San Jose area, right in the midst of the Silicon Valley.
Around the same time.
Yeah. So geographically, it's positioned right in the center of world technological innovation and surveillance.
And in the United States history, first of all, the Jesuits were terrified when the colonists made the U.S. The Declaration of Independence, and then the civil rights that we have, and our Constitution. And so they had 3 secret meetings in Italy in the early 1800s One was the secret Treaty of Verona. I believe it was 1815. And France, Austria, Prussia, and Russia made a secret agreement to create a fund and to fund it, all of them together, and that money would be used to defeat all democratic movements in their countries, on the continent, and in any future places, anywhere in the world, where a democratic movement might start.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there wasn't anybody there now except indigenous people who wouldn't be doing that. And that fund was received trillions of dollars in World War II from the looting of 12 Southeast Asian countries and China of the accumulated wealth over 5,000 years of Silk Road trade. All of that money was looted and stolen, and it was...
This was what they call Yamashita's gold.
Yamashita's
right?
gold,
With
right.
Sterling Seagrave and
Right.
Peggy Seagrave
Yes.
wrote a great book
Right.
on it, which
That's
should
right.
be required reading for
That's right.
everybody because it brings all these different threads together, and it also shows how this project, this centuries-long project, how it's been funded.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's how it's funded. It's
Mm-hmm.
by stealing accumulated wealth. Now, who would know all that wealth was there other than those ancient Iranian tribes? They were the silk merchants that made that Silk Road really, really rich. And they were the richest of all. So that money was all stolen. It was more gold than even the bankers in London knew existed on this planet. It was much more than the Nazi gold. And that was taken to Japan. The emperor hid it under his palace, and when that was full, then they hid it other places, and then the U.S. embargoed Japan. So it was transported on Red Cross ships that were supposed to be full of wounded soldiers, and instead it was full of gold and treasures, gemstones, everything. And it was placed in 67 hidden repositories that were built by Japanese engineers all over the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And
They had very sophisticated tunneling
very
technology and
yes.
know-how, which had trapdoors and all types of
Yes.
secret passages.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was all hidden in the Philippines, and when all of them had been completed and the very last one was full of treasure, one of the imperial princes was sent in a submarine to the Philippines.
Prince Chichibu.
Yes, and he went to that last repository to celebrate with all the engineers who were there. And at midnight, he walked out. They were all drunk and singing and out of it. And he walked. He took his driver, his little young Filipino driver. They walked to the entrance. He blew up the entrance with explosives and sealed them in where they died. And he had the map of all the repositories in his pocket. The driver took him to the beach. He gave him the keys, the driver to the keys to the little driver, and he said goodbye. The car's yours. And he got in the submarine and went back to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of that treasure was discovered, well, Colonel Lonsdale, who was operating in Japan during and after World War II.
We're talking about Colonel Edward Lansdale.
Edward Lansdale, involved in the Kennedy assassination. And General MacArthur got together and they said, should we give all this treasure back to the countries it was stolen from, or should we keep it in secret accounts? And they decided to go and discuss it with President Truman. They decided to keep it in secret accounts all over the world, and that's been funding the overthrow, the very first overthrow of a democratically elected leader was Mossadegh of Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been overthrows, 100 years of overthrows, but the overthrows since World War II have been funded by that that huge amount of money, trillions and trillions of dollars.
And slightly more modestly, from my reading, from what I've gathered, the election of Richard Nixon to the presidency was funded by this Yamashita's gold, this treasure.
That's right.
And also the Liberal Democratic
That's right.
Party in Japan, which has ruled almost continuously since the end of World War II, has been funded by this
Yes.
black budget.
Yes.
Not
and,
budget, but black bank.
And Nixon gave Okinawa back to Japan without even, the Japanese didn't even ask him for it. They're going, what, we didn't even ask him for it. What's he doing that for? Well, he wanted election money so that he would get elected, and they gave it to him. So you see all this underground stuff is happening. It's happening right here at Davis.
Certainly.
The same thing. It's the same agenda. It's the same ancient bloodlines, and it's the same secret money that's funding it. So that's why this is so
Just as a
very, very
sidebar,
important.
I wrote a chapter in this book of mine, the current book that I have out, Servitors of Empire, which I devote an entire chapter to Iris Chang. And she was being heralded as this incredible researcher and historian, rightfully so. She was a very good researcher. She did the book on the, as it's called, the Nanjing massacre. But then she befell these groups. She was on the Yamashita story, gold story. And I think what happened in her case is that she found out that the official history and propaganda that she had been fed in order to research this book, right, on the Nanjing massacre, which is a propaganda piece largely. This is what historians say, not me. This is what they say. And this particular chapter here talks about, and I think her mother is in agreement with this, her so-called suicide was because she had found out that the Yamashita's gold was financing the very system that she thought she had been supporting, American democracy.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is all
yes.
very, very relevant for what's going on today.
And I want to recommend this highly. Servitors of Empire, Studies in the Dark Side of Asian America. And this is by Daryl Hamamoto. And there is so little written by Asians or non-Asians about the Asian players in all of this.
Absolutely. And secret societies.
And secret societies.
And the role of the Jesuits in Asia,
yes,
including Japan,
that's right.
Philippines,
That's right.
Vietnam.
Yes, yes.
That's where I'm taking
And
this.
they came with the Portuguese explorers, and they were installed in Japan in the 1500s.
Then they were kicked out.
Then they were
in
kicked out.
1587,
Yes.
which allowed Japan to flourish
Yes.
and to develop to become a very powerful country
Right.
that the Jesuits never forgave them for.
That's right. And so please read this. Please give it as a gift to people. Please recommend it, because it's very, very informative, and it's a huge missing piece of the history of our nation.
And even more importantly, please support me in my battle with my Department of Asian American Studies, which
Yes.
took me out of 3 courses this past winter quarter.
That's right.
Because they do not want the students to get this type of information.
That's right.
With the full backing of Linda Katehi, Dean Susan Kaiser, and all the different Jesuits that are in these power positions that are really running the show here at the University of
Eichenbach.
California.
Eichenbach.
Yes, this guy Carl.
Eichenbach.
Is it Eichenbach? Yeah. He fits the profile. Right?
He's
So
the co-chancellor.
he's the co-chancellor, and I announced this
Yes.
at my faculty meeting this past week, and of course my colleagues scoffed at it and laughed at it. Oh, he's just her handler in her press. I said no, he's he's the co-chancellor.
Yeah.
And then one of my colleagues,
Yeah.
who's beginning to see that I'm not the crackpot that
Yeah.
because they try to paint you as being crazy and a
Yes.
crackpot. She looked it up in her computer in real time as I was saying this, and she said, "Oh my gosh, he's right.
Yes.
He is the co-chancellor."
Yes.
So the point here, it's not about me. It's just look behind the veil, look behind the curtain, and see who's really in power and how the system functions. And there are more and more people, and I predict there's going to be a renaissance in academic and scholarly literature in general that's going to be fueled to a large extent by the innovative research of my colleague, my dear friend, Lorraine Murray.
Yes.
And that's what the enterprise is all about.
Yes.
That's what the human experience is about.
Yes.
This is how we've been able to survive and excel as a species.
Yes.
And we are going to prevail in this
Yes.
in this effort because we can break it down in ways that no ENIAC computer or AI program or logarithm even comes close to.
So, so that is why Occupy happened here. That's why Katehi was chancellor. This is the New World Order, the ancient Iranian tribes making the rules and conditioning people and students and universities and the public and parents to expect this type of illegal and unfair behavior, because this is the future. And Dr. Hamamoto came up with a plan for an institution of cooperation between Vietnam and UC Davis. And the university was, Davis, the campus, was really, really interested in this, in supporting it. And Dr. Q Lin helped by taking delegations from businessmen and so forth, different interested people, to Vietnam and back. And so now the university is taking this over and trying to push Dr. Hamamoto out of the university by making things up and accusing him of things he didn't do and putting him on administrative leave. Well, the irony is that 2 months after he was put on administrative leave by Dr. Katehi, now she's on administrative leave. So these are just now she's in a UCD ethics scandal, and some of the things that she's been accused of are controversial moonlighting activities. DeVry University board seat, she took that, and John Wiley and Sons board position, and took hundreds of thousands of dollars in money from them, which is illegal. It's a conflict of interest. She was involved in taking hundreds of thousands of dollars in university money and having the pepper spray scandal scrubbed off the internet. In other words, she paid a computer personnel companies, private ones, to remove that whole scandal from the internet.
Most recently, she has contracted an external attorney.
Yes.
In Sacramento, spending I don't know how much money in order to go after me one more time, since they haven't really been able to bury me completely.
And the University of California.
The university is paying for that. The taxpayers of the state of California are paying for the outside persecution of me.
And the University of California has buildings full of lawyers that are on salary, that are UC employees. They use those for the first lawsuit. They don't hire outside law firms until the appeal. If they lose, they will appeal it. And they spent over $5 million on outside lawyers on an appeal for an award of $350,000 to a Mexican-American man at UC Santa Barbara. So they're spending taxpayers' money, student money, $5 million to reverse a $350,000 judgment. It's so bizarre. She also, the strategic communications budget soared also. She also increased the salary by $50,000 of her daughter-in-law after her son married this woman on the UC staff at Davis. And then she gave the woman a bunch of promotions and also took her son out of his graduate school department and put it in his wife's department and put him under the supervision of his own wife. So and then she lied to the president's office about the board money and everything. So,
Structural corruption from top to
Yes.
bottom, from the departmental level, as in my case, all the way to the administration.
president's office.
To the president's office, at the expense of the American public.
yes, and the Board of Regents,
And the
they're,
Board of Regents.
they're involved too.
Now, Loren, as we wrap it up here, I wonder if you could perhaps give us a vision of how
Yes.
we're going to prevail over these individuals, this cast of characters, which so far have gone undetected and as a result unpunished.
First of all, this is an extreme example of political ponerology, and that is the evil inherent and expressed through politicians, and these are public figures. They're a form of politicians in the education arena.
So how will we prevail over
Well,
this pomerology system?
They get away with it because the public doesn't know. The students don't know. It's all done secretly.
So we'll prevail by
yes.
educating them.
Yes, by educating people, by exposing the scandals, by presenting the truth, and it empowers people by putting that truth out and just leaving it alone. You don't want to force people to do anything. You want to say, here's the information when you're ready to use it. And it empowers people to find their own solutions that a lot of times are better than what you would have thought up for them. And I think that the students on the campus, understanding the corruption of Chancellor Katehi, were responsible for this scandal now coming out in public, and for the removal of her. Well, she's only
That's
on
great.
she's only on administrative leave for a month on a paid salary. But I think that people who are in the California government are not happy about it either.
Right.
And there are many calls. I believe that Jenna Napolitano, it was reported in the media several times, has asked for her to resign.
I see.
And so
She has retained a lawyer, so
Yes.
she might not go without a fight.
she'll probably not go without a fight, but when she was in a scandal when she left the University of Illinois, so
And so was her replacement,
Yes.
who's the acting
yes,
chancellor. So we're talking about a system, ladies and
Yes.
gentlemen. We're talking about individuals here, but we're talking about a system which is in bad need, serious need of investigation, reformation, and the perspective that Ms. Moret has provided us today
yes,
has been an incredible tool in
yes,
prying up these barnacles that are slowing down the ship.
yes,
Because we're going to sail to the outer universe if allowed to do
Yes.
so. That's our part of our endowment. Science
Yes.
is not inherent; it's liberating. But we
Yes.
have these types of people who monopolize this knowledge
Right.
and have perverted it.
Right.
So we're going to free it up, and we're going to enter into a new era, a renaissance of human creativity and achievement.
absolutely.
If these people are just shunted aside. And
And-
we'll do a peace and reconciliation to say, just go away, all right?
Yes.
Just let us do our thing. We're
Right.
not interested in throwing you in prison where you should be. Just let us be. Let us fulfill our destinies as human beings.
And what's so egregious is this is an outrageous violation of university policy, of state government policy, of constitutional rights.
It's criminal.
It's criminal.
Let's call it what it is. It is criminal.
And yet, this selective enforcement, putting her in administrative leave for only 1 month, is typical of the University of California. And there's so many people who've done even worse things in the administration who never were made accountable for it because it's part of the culture. Now, what is happening in the University of California and UC Davis is this swing to Satanism is converting these institutions into places where they're bringing foreign students here, they're bringing out-of-state students here, and they're training them to occupy their own countries, to overthrow their own governments and to act as saboteurs in corporations and places where they go for employment in the future. And so it's destroying the fabric, the social fabric and the economic fabric of their countries.
We have been warned, ladies and gentlemen. It's up to us to subvert these plans.
That's right.
And they've been workshopped and they've been war gamed. They've been white papered. We know the problem now. Now is the time to act. So can we, at this point, promise to carry on the conversation and
Yes.
further deepen it
Yes.
at a later time?
Yes.
Ms. Murray, Lauren Murray, my dear friend and colleague, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been a joy, a pleasure. I haven't had this much fun so far as intellectual exchange in years. Because I'm used to working with cowards, bullies, and ignoramuses.
Well, I'm not afraid, and I love adventures, and this is really the best adventure I've ever been on, with the wildest characters involved. And who would ever think Fidel Castro was an ancient Iranian who his family and his bloodline have ruled the world for the last 5,000 years? Who would believe that? That's how deceptive they are.
We're going to put humanity back on top.
Yes.
Thank you, Loren.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
Yes.